Today on Under the Big Tree, repairing and restoring a Polivoks synthesizer. Through blind luck, I recently stumbled into one of my absolute bucket list synthesizers, a Polivoks Soviet-made analog synthesizer from the 80s. I couldn't believe I was able to find one of these. I got it from somebody who I traded some microphones for, and it is a wonderful. It's a wonderful synthesizer. It sounds very nasty, very aggressive, with a really interesting sounding filter. The format and the layout is very similar to other analog synthesizers of the era. So even though you probably can't read the Cyrillic, we have a modulation section there. Then we have two oscillators, Generator 1 and Generator 2. So these are oscillator 1 and oscillator 2. The mixer section, filter section, and an amplifier section. It's got an absolutely awful plain keyboard, but the sound itself is fabulous. So this one powers up, but it needs an awful lot of love. It needs a deep cleaning. The sound would cut in and out, I'm sure due, or certainly hopefully due to an awful lot of dirty pots and contacts. The keyboard itself is completely filthy, and it is yellowing with age. And so what I'm going to do in this video is take this beautiful instrument apart, so we'll be able to get a good look at the insides of it, work on cleaning it up, restoring it, and then hopefully have a listen to a fabulous sounding instrument when it's all said and done. Okay, a couple of things just as we start. There's one screw for the front panel. The others all appear to be empty. In addition, there is this plastic piece that covers the front of the keyboard, and it's only available on one half. The other half is not there. So I think this is going to be something that I'm going to have to design out and 3D print. Okay, so of course we're going to have to start disassembling this thing. So the first thing that I am doing, I've turned it over and put it on a towel, and I'm removing the 4 rubber feet from the bottom of the instrument. Okay, so now we're looking at the synthesizer itself upside down. This is the keyboard area, and these are these front tabs that should have been screwed into the front of the casing itself, but since those screws were missing, as soon as I disconnected the feet from the bottom, I was able to separate the whole thing. So as we look inside, we can see actually really nice build quality. So we have these cards that are sort of in this cage here. There's this metal bar that holds everything in place. There is the power transformer there, and a pair of power filter capacitors that have already been replaced once. So a few things that I'm noticing as I'm starting to look inside of here. Clearly this thing works with 110 volts, not 220, which was how it was originally designed, of course. Taking a look at these 2 filter capacitors, these are Zycon caps. These are not the original caps that were put in when the thing was built, so somebody has already done some level of work inside of here. I'm not sure if this is the original transformer and it was simply rewired to be able to work with 110, or whether it's a replacement. I will find out more as I start researching it. And then here is the power supply board, which looks like it's in really good shape. Everything is very clean. I suspect that that cap and that cap are not original and were replaced, but the diodes look clean. I don't see anything burned. The voltage regulators look clean, and they also look like they're Russian to me. So I'll be curious when I power this thing on to see what the voltages look like. I'm looking on these Soviet pots and figuring out where there is a hole that I'll be able to squirt deoxit into to clean them out. I don't see anything here on the bottom, which means I may have to squirt it in from the top. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can clean the pots and switches from the front. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off all of the knob heads. They are just a standard D-shaped connection, which very gentle pressure with a flathead screwdriver will allow it to be able to pop right out. Now the little knob tops are for most of the knobs, but we have these 5 knob tops for the mode for the modulation, and then for the range and waveform of the 2 oscillators. These big knobs are a lot harder to take off because they have a little metal spring-loaded clip inside of there, which no matter how careful I was, I scraped up the bottom of it and scraped up this area with the screwdriver, but it'll be covered and you won't be able to see it. Okay, I'm trying to take the plastic top off, so I took it out of the bottom section of the case, and then I disconnected this larger flathead screw there, and I'm taking out these 2 smaller flathead screws on the upper side of both of them, and we'll see if that's enough for the system to come out or whether there's more to be done. Okay, there's one more screw that you have to disconnect, and then you can remove the side panel. It's this Phillips head screw right here, and as soon as you pull it out, it loosens the key bed and allows you to pop the side panel off. So then you can gently loosen this and remove it, exposing the bottom and the key bed. Now, there are really short wires that are connecting the key bed to the main system, so it's not like there's some nice plug that you can disconnect to remove the key bed, but I realized that if I lift this up and use the key bed itself as a stand for it, there is enough room to do that, and it feels like it's pretty secure. So I'm going to attempt to then remove these small screws here, which will hopefully take these plates off, allowing me access to the keys so I can pull them off and clean them. Well, I unscrewed them and it's holding fast. I thought that these 2 pieces of green metal were separate from each other and that it would slide out, but they're welded together. So I couldn't find a clean, easy way to be able to easily remove the keys, so I'm just going to wash them here in situ very carefully. Okay, I'm going to start with the most gentle way to try to clean these keys off. I have a bowl of water with just a small bit of dishwashing soap in it and a microfiber cloth. I'm going to dip the cloth in, make sure there's no spare water on it. Let's see, right there. And look at that. Worked beautifully. Yeah, this method of just using a microfiber cloth with just a little bit of water and a little bit of dishwashing detergent is perfect. It's taking these keys and turning them from really filthy to perfectly acceptable. I had bought some hydrogen peroxide bleach and I was going to bleach these keys from yellow to white, but considering the age and the fragility of this instrument and the fact that there's no way I would be able to get any other keys if I broke one, I think I'm going to leave well enough alone and just clean it and keep it that way. Okay, I put it all back together again. It looks really clean. Don't take out these screws unless you have to, because as soon as you do, a black piece of plastic underneath that it's being attached to falls down, and then it becomes difficult to be able to get it back up again and screw it back into the pieces. So be sure that there's a good reason to do that. It took me a while to put that back together. So after looking at this for a while and trying to figure out how to take this top off so that I can get better access to those pots to clean them, I think I'm coming to the conclusion that I actually need to put this back together again, turn it upside down, and then remove these cards, and then remove the main motherboard card from there, and then clean it that way instead. Okay, I got the sides back on, and I've taken a close look and I've learned a couple of things. The first one is, do not remove these side panels unless you absolutely have to. It's very difficult to put back in. You have to line up these plastic holes with pieces of aluminum on the inside, and none of it is very user-friendly at all. So only take them off if you absolutely have to. Now, as I'm looking in here, I've looked all around these pots on the bottom here to see if there's anywhere that I can get into spray deoxit, and I don't see anything. I don't see anything from the front either. And so I'm of the sad conclusion that I think I'm really going to have to take all of these boards out and these motherboards out to be able to spray them from the front. Okay, I'm going to bite the bullet and do it. I've got my deoxit over there. I'm going to unscrew this bar, and then I will take the cards out one at a time and store them carefully away where they can't be touched. I've already taken photographs of them so that I know the proper order to replace them, but I'll be really careful about putting them out in the order that they're going to go back in as well. These card slots are a little different than what we're used to here in the West, but it's the same basic idea. I'm just being very gentle, pulling them up. They have little metal female connectors there and the male pins there. And this little plastic end there only goes one way, so that helps keep the polarity correct. So these come out, and then I have to remove these crazy looking hand-wired connectors that connect the two motherboards together. Okay, here's the guts of the Polivoks all ready to go. Now what's interesting is if you look at it, there's no dust, there's no dirt, everything actually looks really good. The metal contact points are even relatively shiny, so it's just gotta be a lot of scratchiness and dirt that's in the pots. Okay, I've almost completely disconnected the first board. I removed all the screws. The only problem is that there are wires soldered on this side and that side, meaning that I'm going to have to unsolder a couple of things. So I'm going to unsolder this pair, and what I did to make sure I knew which way it would go is I took a blue Sharpie and put a little line on that one and a little blue dot next to it so that I know when I solder it back up which wire is going to go where. Okay, I have been able to remove the first of the motherboards, and it looks pretty clean. I can see where I'll be able to spray deoxit into the switches, which is good. I think I will take one of these bolts off and see whether I have access to anywhere to spray on this pot. Okay, I took the nut and washer off of this pot, and there is absolutely nowhere to be able to get in there. So what I think I will do is attempt to spray from the bottom instead. Okay, this seems to be working. So I've got my can of deoxit. I'm just going right in underneath this wiper. Give it a little spray, and then use one of the knobs, temporarily attaching it to the pot so that I can start exercising it. Just go back and forth to try to spread the deoxit across the wiper and hope that we get rid of any crud and dirt that's in there, keeping it from making a good solid contact. And on to the next. Okay, time to do these crazy rocker switches the same way. I see a little spot down there. I'm just going to give it a small squirt of deoxit and then exercise. Okay, the first one's ready to go back in. First thing I'm going to do is solder the wires back in place, and then put it in and attach all the screws. Okay, I have finished that board, screwed it back in. Hopefully everything is fine. I resoldered it. Now for this board, now that I know that I'm spraying from down here, I don't think I'm going to pull it out of the chassis. I think I'm going to set the Polivoks on its side so that I can squirt into it and then exercise the pot from the front. and hopefully that will give me the same effect without having nearly as much hassle. Okay, I have finished deoxiding the entire inside of it. I'm going to leave it to dry overnight. Tomorrow I'll come and spray the cards and the card slots there to try to make sure that there aren't any problems there. And then I'll put it all back together and we'll see if we have any sound or not. Oh, there is one thing that I was going to do that somebody already did for me, which is originally in the design, both the hot and the neutral lines were switched on and off at the power switch here. But in the US, you only want the hot to be switched on and off. You want the neutral to be connected at all times. And somebody else clearly already did this. You can see that there's some solder bulbs down here on this part of the switch that are empty. And here's a wire that has been heat shrinked together. So somebody else already made that safety repair before I got to it. Okay, it's the next morning and now I'm going to spray the contacts of the different cards as well as the connections on the card side to try to make sure that there aren't any connectivity issues there. Okay, the cards and the wiring harnesses have been put back in. Everything looks good. I'm almost ready to test it out, but I'm going to check the power supply. Let's take a look at the voltages and maybe measure the filter capacitors as well to see whether those are good before we power up. Okay, this is the challenge of working on a Soviet synthesizer, just even figuring out where to look. It took me a while, but I think I know how the voltages work now. So this is one of the schematics. It says Y8 right there, which is the power supply card. And if we look through all of this, right there that says Obshi, which means general or common. And so that's got to be ground. And if you see there, it looks like there's a symbol that says, yep, I'm ground. So that's pins 8, 9, and 10. Then we have 11, 12, and 13. Minus 12, comma 5B. So comma is European, so it's 12.5. And B is actually V for volts, because in Cyrillic, that letter is pronounced V, not B. Pins 11, 12, and 13 are negative 12.5 volts. 14, 15, and 16 are plus 12.5 volts. So then I started looking around in here to try to figure out where that was all coming from. I looked over there at those numbers that are connected to the power transformer and the filter caps, but that's not actually it. I finally figured out that it is these pins on the power supply. So if we take a look here, we can see that there are 16 of those pins across, and 8, 9, and 10 are soldered together, as well as 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So, alright, that's got to be it. And then if you look here very carefully, it says 1 on the top for pin 1 and 16 on the bottom for pin 16. Okay, so I have the black lead attached to the ground pin, and I have the red lead attached to the negative 12.5 volt pin. It's all set up. Let's turn it on and see what we get. Look at that. Negative 12.6. Alright, I moved the hot lead to positive voltage, and let's see what we get. We should be getting positive 12.5 volts. Look at that. 12.7, which I'm sure is just fine. So great news. So it looks like we've got power working properly in this device. Okay, just to be sure before I put everything back together, I've left the synth on for 15 minutes, powering up. The voltage has not changed at all. It doesn't smell, it's not hot, there's no smoke, So I think that we are good to go. Before I put the bottom on, I'm going to do a quick clean. You can see there's some dirt and some dust accumulated in the bottom. Not too bad, but let's make it sparkle. Okay, I've just screwed the bottom piece of armor onto this thing. It really is kind of built like a Soviet tank, which just connects up with the 4 rubber stoppers. So before I put the knobs on, it's time to clean the surface of the synth. There's a bunch of dust and dirt, and it's just, you know, been around a long time. I'm going to do it exactly the same way that I did the keys, in which I'm going to take a microfiber cloth and just dip it in water with just a tiny bit of dishwashing soap. Squeeze it out until there's almost no water on it, and then slowly work my way around it. Okay, I've completed the cleanup with just simple water and a few drops of dish liquid. Not bad. Well, in for a penny, in for a pound. I guess as long as I have the knobs off. I've got some warm water, some warm sudsy water here. And I've got a bunch of knobs. Spray them with glass cleaner. Give them a quick brushing. And drop them in. Yeah, that was worth it. These knobs look absolutely gorgeous now. They look like they're practically brand new. Alright, so the big knobs are back on, and they look great, but then there was something very unpleasant that I figured out, which is that these knobs, the internal ring is glued in at different orientations relative to the rest of the knob on each of these. So what that means is that I am going to have to figure out the correct positioning for each knob relative to each of the posts so that it goes, so that the orientation is correct. So right there, that one's wrong. So if you have a Polivoks and you take these things off, you may very well want to keep track of which knob came from which pot. Alright, I have found where all of the knobs go, and it really was like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, but it was kind of fun. All of the knobs are back properly on the thing, and I cannot believe that this is a Russian synthesizer from the 80s. It looks absolutely fabulous. The cleanup really, really did a nice job. Okay, I put the Polivoks back together again, gave it a tuning. There are videos on the internet out there as to actually how to tune the oscillators relative to each other using those screws. Worked perfectly, and here we have a wonderful sounding, mostly working, and absolutely funky and distinct sounding synthesizer just loaded with character. Add some noise. Brings in. Brings some. As you can see, it's just an amazing sound machine. If you ever come across a Polivoks, even if it's all beat up, just grab it. Thanks a lot, and once again, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a wonderful day.